It's one of these rubbings of cliches together. Finn, the Finn cycle, the Finnegan, and Finnegan.
Yeah. The night is the world in which the dirty linen of the day gets washed by repetition and scrubbing. It is also the world of the archetype.
And the dream. The dream is closure for.
Whereas the day is the world of the cliche, the visually tied together things.
Right.
And the world of the archetype is the world of the ear, where each item has its own bounds, creates its own conditions.
Creates its own space and so on, yeah.
This
also very important, and this is sort of an implicit metaphor, is the way that Finnegan wakes.
Michael Finnegan.
A generation, at least a generation of warning or notice in advance of technological change.
It's a kind of magic. Oh yes, magical. Oh, the medieval man lived in an acoustic or magical world.
writing did not merely record language.
Notice in advance of
ignoring the semantics in the dictionaries, going for the resonance, what Eliot called the auditory imagination.
And with all its effects, social consequences carefully dramatized.
Well, how do you make out then, like, say, 50 years ago, if you went to the theatre, you were all dressed up, a woman would wear fur.
You've already said, dressed up.
The following conversation was recorded on the 25th of October.
We want to talk about this time. You don't dress down. Well, by the way, the genes are dressing down.
Right.
But it's also from custom. The social pressure of which you speak is, how do I look? Do I look all right? Now, when you're in role, you don't care how you look. Looking is presenting yourself to a public purely in visual terms. When you're role-playing, you're no longer visual at all.
It's meant to be satire. All my work is satire. I look at satire, I mean just using everyday words as satire on the stop.
So, by the way, the strip teaser is putting on her public, and she's not ever naked. When she goes backstage, she's naked. Out front, she is wearing her public, and she's nude. Nudity is wearing a public. Nakedness is having no public. So the old saying was, are you decent? Meaning, are you ready to have a public?
Finnegan's Wake is a drama, it's a play. And the actors in the play are the media themselves.
And now this is becoming generally available to all the public. The whole public gets conditioned, that sort of thing.
The popular technology present.
But they were not explicit about it.
Well, poets are always very conscious of the problems of their public. Now, in the case of Dante, it's all in his letter to Count Grande. And you see, he was writing in the vernacular for the first time. As a serious poet writing in the vernacular, this is unheard of. All serious poetry is written in Latin.
Yeah.
Confusion of an extreme kind is the normal human condition. Does television have an aesthetic?
And if so, what are some of the recognizable parameters?
The movie became an art form as soon as television went around it.
Finnegan's Wake is a drama, it's a play. And the actors in the play are the media themselves.
Thanks for choosing McLuhan Unclaimed. I'm a winner pigeon. Your selection will proceed right after this. right after this message. The following is formal satire. It's completely made up and does not exist in real life. It's everyone's favorite quarterly time of the year, the Netflix 96-hour chill-out tour. Another chance for you to chill out with your favorite Netflix performers, past, present, and future. At the only multi-locational global bricolage on Earth. All the partners you've grown to expect and some new ones will provide 96 straight hours of Netflix innovation at your local movie theaters all day, all night, for 96 hours! Your chill-out app automatically enters you in the usual contests for production memorabilia, what you call swag, a chance to have your question asked, and of course, 27 lucky winners will receive 1 year of free Netflix upon check-in.
This could be anywhere in Winnipeg by the Assiniboine or the Red River. I see.
What's Wrong with the World? Yes. Handed to me on a Winnipeg street by Tom Eastergood.
The metropolis today is a classroom. The ads are its teachers. The classroom is an obsolete detention home, a feudal dungeon. The instantaneous global coverage of radio TV makes the city form meaningless, functionless. Cities were once related to the realities of production and intercommunication. Not now.
Until writing was invented, man lived in acoustic space, boundless, directionless, horizonless, in the dark of the mind, in the world of emotion, by primordial intuition, by terror. Speech is a social chart of this bog.
A goose's quill put an end to talk.
The goose quill put an end to talk. It abolished mystery.
It abolished mystery, gave architecture and towns.
Gave architecture and towns. It brought roads and armies, bureaucracy.
Brought roads and armies, bureaucracies. It was the basic metaphor with which the cycle of civilization began.
It was the basic metaphor with which the cycle of civilization began. The step from the dark into the light of the mind.
The step from the dark into the light of the mind. The hand that filled a paper built a city.
The hand that filled the parchment page built a city.
But the thing is that you don't tell people what to do. That's what's frightening.
Well, the moment you start telling what to do, you'll have to moralize.
Right, so exactly.
And I refuse to moralize.
Nothing is for sale until it has first been processed in a factory and packaged.
And mass produced.
And mass produced and packaged. That is the Western way of doing things. Now this is a paradox, that the earliest form of craft is really already a form of mass production.
Yeah, without the assembly line.
The job of the artist is constantly to wake us up.
What
it was Rimbaud's phrase, de règlement de tous les sens.
Yeah.
This is the job of the artist, to upset you, to keep you off balance all the time. And this is what I do. That's my job.
You call yourself an artist?
In that sense, yes.
Yeah.
My approach has to be used if anybody wants to get hold of anything.
Who will meet? Why we care?
It's the only possible way of coming to grips with your time.
Not me. That came down. The number of people who would...
Same with the motor car.
No, what,
You name it. The line in that, as a means of organizing human energy is disappearing.
That I've almost decided to go back to commenting on content.
Stag lines?
Straight lines. Until we break away from, we still like to speak of following a person.
It's pure escapism.
Apropos, for example, a thing like Star Wars.
I'll tell you, I think the opposite is true, Marshall. I think at this point there is more interest. There was that series in the Washington Post with your article. There was a series.
I know, but I was still fighting against that blank wall, and
everybody's interested in content, but for example, have you seen Star Wars?
No, I haven't. My wife and daughter saw it yesterday. My son saw it a few weeks ago.
They liked it?
They liked it.
Yeah, well now it is very nostalgic. It's all old stuff.
It's all old Buck Rogers. John Carey is here, and he's...
Yeah, and it was also the Wizard of Oz.
I'd like to get at one. Well, I mean, I was thinking the fact book is the thing that you have to dig.
In other words, we're using these as a means of revealing all sorts of things.
If I were you, I would show up Village Voice.
I never read that. I heard about it.
Why don't you just show up there and ask him for the copies? You could upset that whole pamphlet. It's just it.
But
do that as dessert sometime.
Okay, I'll do it. Would I need a bodyguard?
No.
No, the guy who wrote that, I assume, was the sort of guy who, one afternoon.
However, I'm not trying to solve problems here. I'm just trying to spot processes.
I've been amazed and puzzled by it for a long time. I've been paying attention to it for a long time.
Yes.
And also a lot of old wartime films about fighter pilots and so on.
What John said was interesting. He said, although everybody is talking about the visual excitement in it, that most of the visuals become more meaningful because of the way the sound is handled with them.
That's true. That's true.
You know?
Now, on the other hand, as I say, I'm getting fed up with the simple-minded bias.
Some people, charisma means looking like a lot of other people, like contractors.
Who hates money, so you work here.
Are you still there? Welcome to TELUS Messaging Service. Using a touch-tone phone, please enter the number of the person you'd like to leave a message for, or press the pound key to enter your own mailbox number.
If this is Mr. Richard David James,
Are you still there?
press 1. Thank you. If you are not Mr. Richard David
If you reassure people by resembling a lot of other people they know, approve of, you have charisma. But if you don't have a resemblance to a lot of other people who are socially acceptable.
Let's say the Tower of Babel.
On the other hand, Finnegan represents that in another level, the Finn or tribal cycle, to which we now return again.
He's the tribal man, the corporate expression of the tribal man.
First, I might point out that the title, the medium is the massage, is a pun.
But anyway, let's just keep remembering it's figured
on
grounds.
Several levels.
So if you want to know what's happening
including
20th century man, why he is so deeply involved in other people, it's information.
Can you prove he's wrong?
Well, no, not right now, but if you give me some time.
Well, that's something we don't have very much of.
According to him.
Yeah, well, let me tell you something. Right now, it's a lot safer to go his way than it is yours.
How did you get to be sheriff?
Look, this is not a suggestion, it's an order. Move on.
Obie didn't know what Trump's pitch was going to be.
Obie, they're changing your image.
Okay.
And the studio says you're escorting Carlotta Valdez to your premiere tonight.
How come? I don't know her.
Studio's arranging it. They're changing your image.
And will not yield representatives, but only freakouts.
I couldn't, Saturday afternoon you can't get any pressing done in New York. Literally. I mean, that's not a figure of speech. I spent $4.50 in a cab going around every pressing establishment in New York City. And valet services at Grand Central everywhere, no home. But this old guy, in between these miseries that I went through that day, he kept barging in, trying to get something from me. And I said, well, look, I'm going to be speaking tonight. And have you read my books? He says, no. Well, I'll be saying a lot of things that are in the books tonight on this speech and so on. Why don't you let that go for an interview? Oh, I guess it made him real mad. But anyway, he was a real nuisance.
why he was a nuisance all that afternoon. And because I was in public, there was no privacy. And so I guess this happened as a result. Doesn't do any harm, does it?
Not at all. You gotta find these guys. Because for a while you were going off there with no blocks, nobody standing in your way, and it was too good to be true. It couldn't happen today. As these guys build up, you'll get stronger. It'll be more fascinating.
You know, one of the amazing things about the computer that it's all now being set to do the old job. Even museums, you see, are merely storage systems. The real power of the computer is as a source of discovery.
I don't say this is a good or bad thing. I don't even pretend to know. But it disappears under the impact of an all-at-once technology.
He would have nothing to say.
Of our world, it's not just people, it's the whole world. I mean, it's our whole culture.
Right there about your style and your famous quote about
I'm writing for a public that will eventually like me. It may be a long time from now, it doesn't matter. Or they may be here now, but they're very few. It doesn't matter. But I don't use any popular acceptance as a standard for what I do. I don't measure myself against acceptance or reputation. I'm not interested in having a reputation.
You think eventually they will recognize you?
My approach has to be used if anybody wants to get hold of anything. It's the only possible way of coming to grips with your time. When you become completely adjusted to canoe, you're a robot.
You're an extension of the canoe instead of your
It's comical, of course.
That is we have bypassed the literate world of hardware and the lineal left hemisphere technology. We have bypassed it by moving once more again into the altogether world, the holistic world of the right hemisphere people, who are the third world people. So what is happening to our own children is we're watching them become third world.
What does that mean?
Well, it means that they feel much more groupy and trendy than they do private or goal-oriented.
The world of visual space is in the left hemisphere, the sequential, continuous, connected one. The world of acoustic, primitive, third world space is in the right hemisphere. It's a world of the simultaneous, the holistic, and the world of gestalt and figure ground and pattern recognition.
McLuhan has been absorbed into the minds of everyone of my generation. Now, why is he not read? My theory is this, that the people who were most affected by McLuhan did not go on to graduate school. They dropped out of the system. So by the late 60s, most of my generation were in journalism, or they went into filmmaking, or they joined communes, or they took drugs and they blew out their brains on acid, as I have written, and so on. What we have now at the top, and I'm saying everywhere, it's why we have these vacuums in the major magazines, why we have British editors of so many magazines in America. It's because the generation, which is mine, that should have took over, the one that was most revolutionized by McLuhan's thought, simply opted out. We thought we could change things from the outside, but we could not. So this is my explanation, that essentially what you have are millions of people out there who absorbed McLuhan with their mother's milk, as it were, in college, and who are ready to be resummoned to a new view of popular culture. These are the people who, in fact, buy my books.
So the class structure in England is quite simply simulating print with the boss.
Tell dear Mrs. Equitone I bring the horoscope myself. Boy, does that affect people.
You find it in the schools now. I think he was right. Nobody gets taught how.
And when
this vulgar, trashy.
There's a wonderful essay that you should read if you haven't, called The New York Wit. It's really an attack on the readers of the New Yorker, and it has, or on the shape of the cheap wit of the New Yorker. He says
art is no value in itself as a thing. There's none at all. But as a function in enlarging human awareness, in training perception, that is entirely a ground function.
Okay, but then correct me if I'm wrong. When you say that the difference between a mediocre painting and a good painting is that a good painting will bring its ground with it more readily and more quickly, or more fully than a mediocre painting.
Well, have I said that?
No, I'm trying to.
I don't think so. I don't think so. What I've said is that no figure, the function of the figure is in relation to a ground of people.
Mm-hmm.
Now, unless those people respond to that figure, unless there is interplay between them, there is no art there. Now, the function of that art is to awaken them to new awareness. Now, American advertising is art that is deliberately veiled by commercial ground. It is deliberately veiled in a microscope.
If the audience can become involved in the actual process of making, the ad,
the function it performs subliminally is quite independent of its commercial function. And when the commercial part of the U.S. is faded off the scene, then these figures will stand out as huge art forms. Yeah. But as long as the commercial veil is over that art, why, it's meaningless.
Then it's happy. Do you know that...
No, I these days I just stay in and read Amazon reviews.
Most people read ads about things they already own. They don't read things to buy them.
Of things I already own? I think I'm just looking for a sense of community.
But to feel reassured that they have already bought the right thing.
By locational art.
Anything I've ever...
That's fascinating.
I have no desire to move into the world that I understand so well.
I'm like, I wonder who else out there is mad about my blender.
In other words, they get huge information satisfaction from ads, far more than they do from the product itself.
A reader.
Like, yeah, this guy Rick is right.
What TV really is.
You are the content.
Flannery O'Connor, she really liked Mechanical Bride. There is no mention of the subject of this documentary in the 60s in this compendium of, well, the point that's being made right now that I interrupted, you know, this one.
So, in other words, you wouldn't be shocked.
For 100 years, people who wanted to talk to other people were wired to their homes. They were latched or chained to their desks and really didn't have much in the way of freedom. So we became aware of the fact that real communications is portable communications. Put the device on the person. I was 4 years old, lived in Winnipeg, Canada, where it's very cold in the winter and very hot in the summer. And I looked at these boys with a magnifying glass, and they were burning a piece of paper by focusing the rays of the sun onto this paper through a magnifying glass. And I just had to know how that worked. And so I did the obvious thing. I took a soda pop bottle and broke it and try to make a magnifying glass out of it. And that's when I realized now that I had discovered that I was going to be an engineer, because I want to know how everything works, and I always have.
As I was when Bill Key told me that he discovered the 3 letters sex on a Titian painting.
No,
a painting by the Titian.
No, they all used that hidden embedding.
Yeah, but I just somehow doubt that the Titian would use SEX.
Friend George Wilson, after he read Bill Key's book, he at once painted a picture in which he had embedded an image or two, and he was amazed to discover they were bought up like mad. by people.
Oh, no,
but just a moment. And he asked these people, why did you buy those pictures?
Hmm?
And they said it gave me a great feeling of intimacy. They couldn't see anything, you see.
Oh, it was there.
It gave me a great feeling of intimacy, they said. These were not art buffs. They were just rich people. But they bought his paintings, these particular paintings at once. He was amazed. He said, of course, I knew that the old painters had done this.
No, I'm not questioning.
Embedding of eroticism is old stuff in way back.
That was part of being an artist.
I want to come back to this business about the USA as the visual.
Okay, come back to it.
No, it's written oral. It's a big thing. You were supposed to have read this and made some questions. Here's written oral clash. I have written 3 stars, meaning this is a very important one. I made this speech, Agnew. I made this speech because I believe and deeply believe that while the right of lawful dissent is sacred, the purposes behind any civil dissent are subject to question. Moreover, perpetual street and campus demonstrating can erode the fabric of American democracy. Now, here he is thinking that the figure is going to erode the ground.
Yeah.
No. The ground is already changing, and therefore all the figure of his democracy is changing. He doesn't know that. He thinks that actually these student manifestations would have a danger democracy.
Yeah.
Absolutely no.
They're the effects.
They're only one of the effects. But my gosh, that's why I say the Americans are absolutely blind to what's going on in the world today.
Well, particularly him.
Oh no, no more than anybody else in America. I do not know any professor of history or law who has any more awareness of what's really happening in America than he does. Now, he at least was worried about the media.
Well, he had a fantastic public appeal. So therefore.
Well, you know why? You see that image?
Yeah.
Now, he may be a Greek, but he looks like an all-American boy, as much as Jack Kennedy did.
Yeah.
He is an all-American boy. Of course, most all-American boys are foreigners anyway.
To start with, yes.
Well, not very long back. Now, he says, I am not speaking now of men who sincerely go down the line with the media majority on all issues, but rather of those who use their ready knowledge of what news and editorial writers like, and many do, to advance their own political careers. So all this is perfectly sound, that the manipulation of the public by irresponsible journalists and so on for their own advantage is an ordinary, everyday thing. Nothing unusual. Couching it in negative terms, if an elected official wants to avoid a bad press, all he has to do is fuzz the controversial issues carefully and work his way around them. Fuzzing blur.
He's a good one to talk. He's been fuzzing issues.
Okay, it's true, he's done it. But that is how anybody who's going into politics would behave from the first day that he went on out to get voters. You can't get voters by raising hot issues. No.
Well,
nobody's going to get a vote that way.
McCarthy did. Wallace does.
Now, just a moment. You are using another ground, a very special ground, a ground that is already a figure.
What?
You're using a ground that has been exasperated by media. Again, hidden grounds, like the electronic media are destroying the basis of most of the psyche, American psyche. And so they panic. They look for scapegoats. A possible way of tying it in. De Bono is trying to say that if you want to be integral, you have to abandon this point of view business and go sideways.
Yeah.
Now he doesn't know how to talk about it, but we know what he's talking about. In the matter of fact, he told me he got it from me.
Oh, he did.
Yeah. And so he's talking about acoustic or total multi-sensuous approach. Structural. He's trying to say structural versus tunnel. And so we won't record this yet, eh? We'll run through these notes.
Okay, well, we can record that in it.
No, but I mean, I'll run through the notes first, then that destroys the music. It destroys the music of the tribe. Pointer, signal, receiver, destination. And then off to one side, they have a little box called noise.
Yeah.
Well, now, we were talking about Marcuse's, his book, One-Dimensional Man, which would seem to be an attempt at a integral presentation of man, or a holistic approach, and it is, in my language, multi-dimensional, such an approach. In other words, it is a kind of acceptance of the condition of man today as tribal in the electric age. Levi-Strauss in The Savage Mind has a comment on how the savage, or the pre-literate man, tends to relate everything to everything in his whole environment.
And therefore is paranoid.
And he adds the comment that that is itself a condition of paranoia.
Mm-hmm.
And the paranoid is a person in actual life who finds all sorts of hidden connections.
Mm-hmm.
But electrically we live in a world which is totally interrelated by information.
Yeah.
And so paranoia would seem to be the most natural condition for an electronic man. However, the word paranoia is an adjective applied to literate man, by a literate man,
yeah,
and is not irrelevant at all to the condition of tribal or acoustic man. So ecological man can get very paranoid about what do we call it? Pollution.
Mm-hmm.
And anyhow, there's Edward de Bono, who has a little book called Sideways Thinking. And he is also trying to get out of tunnel vision, as it is called, the point of view vision of the single-minded person,
mm-hmm,
the person who is looking straight down a perspective of vanishing point perspective and so on. And I want to contrast this tunnel vision, which de Bono was trying to bypass with his sideways thinking. I want to contrast it with structural thinking, structuralism being a popular and acceptable concept. And structuralism is, I think, by its very nature, simultaneous, and therefore the opposite of a point of view. When Cubism came in 1900 or so, it was called multi-locational art, because there was no point of view from which it could be seen.
Yeah, it was seen all at once.
And they didn't know how to approach it, so they called it multi-locational. The word cubism was attached to the thing a little later. But another way of mentioning this non-lineal or non-point of view approach is to mention the world of management, where the new technique is not to look for the answers but to look for the questions. This, by the way, is an Oriental bias. In Zen approaches to management, they stress very much that the first thing to find is what is the question. The answers are simple.
Once the question is put.
Question is hard.
All the philosophers, all the scientists now living are unaware that there is such a thing as visual space, and that they have been living in it for 25 centuries, and that it is suddenly dissolving and leaving them, causing a considerable disorientation in their world. But how the hell do you start talking to these big shots?
You were asking what I've been up to. I've been working on the history of Menippean satire. And history of who? Menippean. That is, I mentioned it earlier, apropos the Dostoevsky book, Bakhtin. Menippean satire is It includes Lucian, the dialogues of Lucian. It includes the Petronius, the world of funny stories, including...
Does television have an aesthetic?
This isn't a game. This is a game.
When you actually you see it in the Odyssey, when Odysseus is washed up naked and alone, he's lost his ship, on the shores of Phaeacia, and he wakes to the sound of girls, women's voices, laughing and singing and so on. It's the Princess Nausicaa going down to do the laundry on the shore, okay? And actually that is exactly what was going on up until fairly recently.
All the philosophers, all the scientists now living are unaware that there is such a thing as visual space, and that they've been living in it for 25 centuries, and that it is suddenly dissolving and leaving them, causing a considerable disorientation in their world. But how the hell, without creating an impression of megalomania or some utter nonsense? It's like Alice in Wonderland,
And training his perceptual training, perceptual training.
I love that. There are no great men, there are only great committees. I'm going to hang that on my wall.
We have it hanging out here.
That's what I'm putting. I think that's terrific. All right. Who said that?
New Yorker. It seems to me that the milieu, in looking back over your work, interior, which is quite numerous indeed, 14, 15 books, 1,000 magazine articles, 1,000 speeches, the basic thrust of the thing has been, it seems to me, to invite our attention to the necessity of looking at the form of media and what the form of media does to human arrangements rather than attending only to content. Now, I toss that out to you as whether you think that is...
Do you start talking to these big shots and explaining the ABCs of their world to them without... and explaining the ABCs of their world to them without...
if you were given a catcher's mitt from a baseball sort of equipment, he would copy the mitt even to the imperfections and breakages.
Into bits. Humpty Dumpty literally fell off the wall with print, and the types were scattered hither and thither. Print also created a new environment. Any technology creates a new environment, a new set of relationships among people. Print created the public.
There was literally no public in Montaigne's time. It was just beginning to form with print. But
well, that was a time when entertainment was all over.
Yeah.
Before printing, no kind of handwriting was capable of creating a public. It wasn't strong enough or powerful enough technologically to create what is called a public. With print came into existence for the first time in human history, the public.
Make something that is transportable and that can be used on a road system.
And to read is to guess.
Will not accept credit cards. Will not accept credit cards. Will not accept credit cards.
The imperceptible matters.
The post-literate book
Came a uniform product.
If anybody has the...
Will not accept credit cards.
The new language. Of industry.
Until this century.
Yeah, but then you
so Euclid was came at the same time. As the alphabet to Greece. Now the Phoenicians were not in Greece. They were all around in the Mediterranean world, but they weren't in Greece. But they weren't in Greece. They came late to Greece. The alphabet came late to Greece. But remember, he's making no distinction between the Phoenician alphabet and the phonetic alphabet. There is a big gap. The Greeks perfected the Phoenician alphabet. I throw the book in the corner. If the guy is not being a structuralist, forget him.
But I can only suggest that confusion of an extreme kind is...
Yeah. Exists in another ground.
The printed book, of which you could have as many copies as you like, all the same.
Yeah. Exists in another ground.
With the coming of uniform products, you have, for the first time in human history, uniform prices.
appears then that McLuhan either doesn't know Euclid lived about 7 centuries after the alphabet began.
The post-literate book exists in another ground.
There never had been any uniform prices for anything prior to printing.
Or has an odd idea of meaning of the word direct.
Now, just a moment. Euclid was a Greek.
And so they haggled and they bargained, but there were no uniform prices. It's, as somebody once said, that the handwritten book was a second-hand market.
Come to Greece. The post-literate book exists in another ground.
Surely reading is half of it is thinking as well as
guessing. And for example, when I look up the word read and find that it means to guess,
every book was different, and you settled the price by second-hand haggling.
Surely reading is
overnight they moved into a new economics.
Right.
Yeah, well, that's fascinating. Guessing, and it is judgment, it is decision-making, but it does require a very high degree of rapid.
And that is not a one-man job. It takes a lot of dialogue and a lot of observation.
He doesn't have a goal.
But I can only suggest that confusion of an extreme kind is the normal human condition in all sensory. Perceptual matters. If anybody has the idea that perception is something they do all the time, they have immense shortcomings.
When you make a sandwich at home, do you reach down past the first 3 or 4 pieces of bread to go down and get the good bread?
And then start looking at the facts. No, perception in the sense of actual reading of the language of one's, and the modes of one's environment, very rare. Only artists are trained in this skill. They develop this skill out of intense fascination with the problem, but they tend to specialize in one or another of the medium.
But based on books. Then they tried to extend that principle to other commodities as much as possible.
Half of it is thinking.
So that mass production was really, came out of the paradigm or the matrix of the printing press.
Well, for example, when I look up the word read and find that it means to guess.
Quantities of information to cope with that the older methods of classified filing of classified information in our memories and so on will not serve.
And capitalism, as Marx understood it, disappeared quite a long time ago because of the completely different nature of money. Money is now information. It's not hardware anymore.
It calls it, the mechanical bride, so that something which is should be natural.
So you can now get a credit card which will allow you to use money.
Is no longer natural. It's being created by.
But a lot of places will not accept credit cards because of bookkeeping problems, all sorts of problems.
The new language of industry.
Now the credit card is a flip over to this acoustic world.
The new language of industry.
Credit is very mysterious stuff. It's made of information only. It's not made of metals and the bankers don't understand it anymore. No, I assure you, they're as confused about these matters as anybody could be.
Early gold had a ground on the
nature of money.
The book, the post-literate book, exists in another ground.
With the mechanization of the scribe's work,
the book, the post-literate book,
came a uniform product.
Exists in another ground.
Uniform prices. Every egg was slightly different. Like every grapefruit, slightly different. And so they haggled and they bargained, but there were no uniform prices. It's as somebody once said, that the handwritten book was a second-hand market. Every book was different, and you settled the price by second-hand haggling.
Surely reading is.
Now the credit card is a flip over to this acoustic world.
The new language of industry.
Credit is very mysterious stuff. It's made of information only.
Early gold had a ground on
money is now information. It's not hardware anymore. It's just credit. And credit is very mysterious stuff.
There's always one man in a million for whom any problem is obvious. If you out there in those millions of people in the mass audience, there's always one guy for whom you say, where's the problem? You do this, and it's simple. The problem is this, and what we have done is this. We have done these things to solve this problem. Now, how do you reach him? Well, what you do is to put on the air, not the knowledge, but the ignorance. That is, you explain the problem is this, and what we have done is this. We have done these things to solve this problem. And somebody out there will say, but you are doing all the wrong things.
Stuff, it's made of information only.
The electronic environment as a total surround is that the audience becomes workforce.
Conceivably have some relevance to the new electric age, which is certainly a frontier age.
Next is my page 19, speech 1.
innumerable confusion.
I don't think you can quite get away with that phrase. Innumerable suggests numbers. Confusion is singular. I don't know. Do you like the phrase innumerable confusion?
Innumerable confusion. Well, it's part of it.
It's part of what?
It's part of the confusion.
Okay. You're miming.
Miming over that.
Still. Innumerable confusion.
Sensory and perceptual language.
You mean that?
I'd like to call myself a UFO. That's the kind of item I put in the dictionary.
We could work together finding your in the dictionary.
An unidentified flying object is an intellectual world.
Which
an unclassifiable verb.
Of the old Blarney, Killarney, the minstrel boy to the war is gone, all that sort of crap. All those old folk songs of England, Irish, Scotland.
By the way, speaking of sick jokes, there was a Toronto nightclub recently where somebody said, "Are there any sick jokes about Marshall McLuhan?" was the question. Well, that's supposed to be a sick joke. Are there any sick jokes about McLuhan? Who is Marshall McLuhan? What is the grievance behind the sick joke?
And when one speaks, what is that then?
Prose.
What? When I say, Nicole?
Nicole, apportez-moi mes pantoufles et me donnez mon bonnet de nuit. C'est de la prose. Oui, monsieur.
Montaigne's idea of the printed word, he said,
service environments have taken the place of...
When Jack grew up to be a man, he went to Labrador. He fished in Indian Harbor where his father fished before. On his returning in the fog, he met a heavy gale. Jack was swept into the sea and swallowed by a whale.
Said yes, if it's in.
You become crafty if anything finished. It's a basic form.
Transcendental, I said yes, and most of it's incidental.
That's a basic principle. Obsolescence creates awareness of the thing.
Sensory and perceptual language.
You name it. The line in that as a means of organizing human energy is
Perceptual language. Sensory and perceptual language.
possibly there may be means eventually of
an orchestration of these faculties, an orchestration of media, so that they will not batter each other to bits.
The satellite worlds put around the globe puts a proscenium arch. The whole of the planet becomes a stage. All the world's a stage now, literally. Shakespeare at the globe said all the world's a stage. We on the globe now see all the world's a stage. Way at the back.